This is Tracy Murray, and you're watching The Gameplay.
Hey everybody, this is Giancarlo Aulino reporting for The Game Plan, and in this special collaboration with sportsboom.com, I am happy to be joined by my guest today. He is an OG Toronto Raptor, former NBA champion, and former assistant coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. He is Tracy Murray. How you doing, Tracy?
What's going on, Giancarlo? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. And Tracy, this has been a month that has been eventful for the NBA. Obviously, with everything going on in the finals, you had OKC and Indiana, two small market teams going at it. From your end, like, you were somebody who came in and saw the rise of the Raptors. You were part of that first year. And to see the game develop and grow in a market like Oklahoma City with a Canadian leading the way, what were your thoughts on just seeing what they were able to do this year?
I just thought the two best teams made it to the finals and slugged it out. And that's what it should be. Big market, small market, it doesn't matter. The two best teams all year, basically made it, and then, of course, something major happens to kind of sway the outcome with an injury. That's one thing that you can't predict is injuries. But I honestly thought that these were the two best teams, especially in the playoffs. Boston had something to say during the season, but when the playoffs started, before Jason Tatum's injury, Boston had something to say, but after that injury, it was all Indiana. They've been playing the best out of everybody in the East. And OKC, I mean, what can you say? They're the champs, and the way they play with each other, the way they care for each other, the way, how unselfish they play, how hard they play. They play the game the right way. The way basketball is supposed to be played, they play it that way. So, for a guy like me, I'm extremely proud and happy to see a team playing the correct way win the championship. There's no championship bought there. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
They were drafted, they developed, they stayed together, they won.
And just even speaking on like drafting and developing, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he came from the Clippers in that big trade, and they pretty much built that team around him with all their draft picks. So what have you seen just from his rise from first year pro and then being this big superstar that's putting up numbers that we haven't seen since Michael Jordan was on the Bulls?
Well, I mean, he's been one of those guys that, when the situation like that happens to you and you get traded early and you're thinking, you're in a spot that is going to suit you, shoot, he probably wanted to stay in LA. It's a big market. It's in LA. Who wouldn't want to be here? But when the business happens, then that's when things change up and you develop a chip on your shoulder. And he had that chip on his shoulder and he kept developing, stayed in the gym, and look at what you have now. You have a little monster on your hands.
And another story that, like, not so long after the NBA Finals, we find out about the Los Angeles Lakers, the majority stake being sold. It's a big figure going around. Deep pockets, obviously. Credit to them. But when you heard that the Lakers are being sold and you were a former player for the franchise, former assistant coach, like, what were your thoughts on just how that deal came together?
No surprise, because if you look around the league, people are selling their franchises. So no surprise. It's a business. You get into the business to grow the business and sell it at some point. So you had to know that at some point the Lakers were going to be sold as well. Boston sold, Portland was on the market, Dallas is sold, now Lakers are sold. People are getting out of the game. So it had to happen at some point. So I'm not surprised.
Is that a positive, you think? Like, especially a family like the Buss family that have been around and involved with the NBA for so many decades. Like, was this a positive in your opinion?
A positive for the Busses, as much money as they made out of this. Yeah, I'm happy for them. They put a lot into it and got more out of it. So I'm happy for that family. I've been knowing them for years. I've been a part of the organization 2 different times. I knew Dr. Buss when I was 19 years old. So To know that Bus family and Jeannie and what she's done to the organization, and all of the Bus brothers that's come up in that organization as well. I'm happy for the family because they put their work in and now they're reaping the benefits for the work that they put in.
And now with everything, a new ownership comes in. They're going to have their beliefs of how to run things. You see Luka Doncic, a star over there, an aging star in LeBron James. Like, do you think this is going to cause maybe a big change, like a LeBron move, or do you think they should stand pat with Luka and LeBron together?
I think with the new regime, you need new change. I honestly think Luka needs to go ahead and be the face of the franchise, because he is younger. Father Time wins in this game. LeBron is great. LeBron has done a lot of tremendous things and still able to do a lot of tremendous things at his age. Doesn't look like he's aging at all in some games. So he's still going to be successful somewhere else if they choose to let him go, or if they choose to keep him. He's still going to be successful in LA. I just think that the game evolves. Father Time wins, and this is how the NBA keeps moving forward. As people go away, new people come in, and they develop and they become stars as well. So it's just the evolution of basketball. It's just what happens. It's no shade on anybody. It's just how the game goes. I had to come in and leave. It's just how it happens.
And also, like with that, with LeBron, obviously what he's accomplished in his career, and you just see around the league, like you were talking about, like other owners selling their teams. One of the big rumors from that has been maybe potential expansion. The commissioner has touched on it in the past couple of years before the finals and his annual press briefings. So if the NBA were to expand, do you think that would hurt the parity of the league right now with these smaller markets, or do you think this is the right time to go in that direction and expand?
I've been wondering what they've been waiting on, because there are so many talented players and not enough spots. So it is time for a couple of more teams to come in and give these, youngsters that are in summer league that are getting let go and going overseas, give them an opportunity to earn a spot. Not only will that earn a spot on one or two teams here, that will also earn a spot on their G League teams too, if they bring in G League teams. So that's really 4 teams in approximately 48, to 60 players that get an opportunity to stay home and earn money instead of going overseas.
And do you think it would be like the cities that everybody would suspect, like a Las Vegas and back to Seattle, or do you think they would actually go in another bold direction and look at the success with OKC and maybe target another small market team?
You never know. I mean, you never know if Tampa's ready for one. You never know. I do know that Las Vegas is a target. They've been testing that ground for over 20 years with the Summer League. I'm wondering what they're waiting on. Pull the trigger. I mean, gambling is part of basketball now. We got gambling sponsors now. So, I mean, the players are not allowed to do it, but you have those type of sponsors now. So what are we waiting on? Vegas is ready. Usually the NBA is the more innovative league and they start things. Yeah. They haven't been the ones starting the trend lately. It's been other teams. There's 4 professional teams there now before them. What are they waiting on? There's nothing to wait on anymore. The Golden Knights are doing well. The Aces are succeeding. The Raiders are there. The A's are coming. It's like, what are they waiting on? There's other stuff there too. If they're not careful, MLS is going to beat them there if they're not already there. So what's the NBA waiting on when it comes to Las Vegas, when it comes to basketball? To touch on that, Seattle does need their team back, to be honest with you.
Because even like Seattle, like when I see some of the past players and they're seeing OKC, like you kind of feel for them because they were a part of that in Seattle. And with OKC winning, like I know they kind of honor the lineage, but for them, I can see it's not the same, right?
No, they don't.
Yeah.
No, they don't. I mean, the only connection to Seattle with OKC is Westbrook and Durant. That's the
Yeah.
only connection. Otherwise, they done snipped that umbilical cord a long time ago.
And one other one that the commissioner has talked about is maybe Canada being another option. Like there are Vancouver, they had the team when you were in the league. They weren't successful like the Raptors were, and I know Montreal has in recent years. Like that talk has kind of materialized a bit with the Raptors going there for some preseason games. Do you think that would be like a successful route for the league if they have another team in Canada?
I don't know, because the Vancouver thing got them scared.
Yeah.
Got them scared. Now the Raptors, I thought it was put in the perfect place. Toronto is really supportive of their sports teams. I mean, even the soccer team is being supported like that. It's like they're a sports town and they're a big market. So it took a while for us, to really establish ourselves there. And I make this joke all the time about the early days. We're an NBA team there, and we were coming on the news after curling. So it took us a while to establish ourselves. Now, will that market have patience, or will they do like Vancouver and get out? So that's it's easy to say, hey, yeah, we want a franchise, but it takes work, it takes dedication, it takes support, it takes what we did early in those early days. These players got to be willing to do that. I'm not sure if they're willing to put in the work to do that, because when we're done playing or practicing, we were in the community, we were taking long trips, we were marketing the game of basketball up and down Eastern Canada. I don't know if everybody's built for that. I was exhausted every day. I had my best year as a pro, but I was exhausted. We were in all kinds of meetings and charity events and stuff during the year. I was a co-chairman of two charities during that time. So you got to put in the work if you want the franchise. The people that you have in that franchise, you're going to lose at the beginning, and you got to be patient. Can you deal with losing? We had a good team. We had the right cast of characters there to draw the attention. Between Damon, Mighty Mouse, as I say, cast of characters, they had nicknames too.
Yeah.
So when you have Damon, big old Oliver Miller, you have Doug Christie, you have myself, you have AC Earl, we had some characters now, Carlos Rogers. We had personalities. Alvin Robertson, we nicknamed him the Raptor because of how hard he played. This is what we want Raptor basketball to be. So when you have Isaiah Thomas, an iconic figure in basketball, Hall of Famer that's trying to lead the charge, you got to have the right people in place, and people that's going to play hard, get out in the community and go hard to sell the game of basketball. If you don't have those right people in place, the Vancouver situation happens. So it's tricky. And people want to talk trash. Oh, yeah, well, Isaiah's not here anymore. They look at us at the beginning and said we suck. No, we didn't suck. We were very successful for a franchise that was an expansion team. Yeah. We set the bar, and then here we go, 2019, we win a championship. We set the bar way back then, the foundation of what we expect. We weren't getting blown out a lot back then. We would lose the game in the last 5 minutes of the game because of lack of experience. So we've only got blown out like a few games. It wasn't a lot. So we were entertaining. We were fighting every game. We played hard for 48 minutes. You got to put that type of product on the floor if you're going to succeed in an expansion franchise. And you're going to get followers and eyes, and you got to have the right people.
Even the venue at the time, like your experience coming in, you came off the championship where you had that experience of seeing guys like Olajuwon, like what it takes to get to that level. And you're coming in now to hopefully be that focal point for that expansion Raptors team. And you see you're going to be playing at Sky Dome at the time, where this is where the Blue Jays play. Like what was going through your mind at that time with how big this could have got just in that first year?
Well, what was coming off my mind is we're in the same building that they won 2 world championships in, the Blue Jays. So we're coming in there in a building with a lot of pressure, and it's a dome. It's not the most friendliest place for people that can shoot the basketball, because of the depth perception. But the way they, position the court at that time, it didn't bother me as much. I thought it would bother me, but it didn't bother me at all. So they did a good job of putting those bleachers surrounding that big part. It's like it was in a huge building, but it was still kind of intimate until those big games like the Lakers and Chicago, and when Michael and Magic came to town, and Shaq. Those are the huge 38,000 people numbers that came to those games. And we had a lot of people at those games all the time, but we got those huge numbers when those huge names came in. And I felt bad for those that were sitting at the top all the way around. It's like we looked like ants on the floor to them,
Yeah.
but they were in the building. They were there when we beat Chicago. I can't tell you how many people was like, man, I was there when we beat Chicago. That's a lot of people that was in that building.
And that night when you beat the Chicago Bulls, they had that at the time record-setting season. Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen,
Mhm.
just like be one of those teams, especially an expansion team in a market like Toronto, a country that's trying to embrace basketball. Like, does the significance still, in your opinion, match? Like, I know they won the championship, but do you think it still gets that kind of significance and praise that it should be for how big that was at the time?
For people that don't know, if you rank wins in that franchise, that's the second win behind the championship,
Yeah.
because we're in expansion year. This is very first year. We beat the best team in history. One of 10 teams to beat the best team in history. No shade to the Golden State Warriors, but they couldn't hold a candle to Chicago Bulls. They would have gotten locked up. That team was very good defensively. They were explosive offensively. As I say again, it's no shade. I love the Golden State Warriors, but that team, Chicago, was outstanding. There was no way we should have beaten that team. No way. Thank goodness John Sally threw a party the night before. We were a half a second from losing that one. If everybody
Yeah.
remember Jay's bank shot going in like zero point 0.5 to a second later. So we were very fortunate that day, that afternoon.
And like a lot of talk has been made of that season, like everyone sees The Last Dance and sees like what
Notice I
Michael
didn't put
Jordan
anything on
what that they
there. I
lose.
didn't mention that. You noticed that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Why do you think they never added that in The Last Dance? Because when I was watching it the first time, I remember thinking like that was a big moment. The Raptors in Canada, and you see the Bulls going there that year. The fanfare of Michael Jordan. Like I was surprised that they never added that in there.
I wasn't surprised. That was a big moment for the Raptors, not the Bulls. That was a low moment for them. So I'm
Yeah.
surprised. I'm not surprised they didn't put it in there. They control what they put in there.
And just you yourself, even at the time, like you're just discussing, like you had the charities that you were a part of and going out and selling the game. As like an athlete coming into a new situation, what was your experience just living in Toronto at the time?
Well, at the time, no one was knocking on my door. I was a free agent. Um, I was protected by Houston, and then Houston decided to go a different direction. So I felt like I got screwed by Houston. They could have let me go in the expansion draft, and I could have gone to Toronto right away, but they protected me because they said they wanted to resign me, and then it didn't happen. So I came in there with a major chip on my shoulder. Everybody was in training camp by the time I came in there. I came in with a couple of days left in training camp. Major chip on my shoulder. I wanted to reestablish myself. It was all in or bust. It was either you make it happen now or you're done. So I had that type of motivation coming into that season. So when I came in there, I hit the ground running pretty much. And I wasn't making minimum up in Toronto with those taxes, I wasn't making very much money. So I was very driven as a basketball player. This was a basketball move, not a money move. It was a basketball move to come in and reestablish myself. So I was coming in with all guns blazing, not caring what people thought. So my living conditions, I wasn't so much worried about that. Being in another country, I wasn't worried about that. Being on an expansion team, I wasn't worried about that. I had been in Toronto before with Team USA a couple years, the year before. We had a couple of practice games against Team Canada for the Pan American Games. So I already knew a little bit about Toronto. So I knew where I was coming to. I knew I was coming to a great city, a clean city. People were friendly, not a lot of crime. It was a fun city. A lot to do, food. I was there in the summertime though. I didn't know about the winter. So that was an adjustment. But other than that, I was coming in focused on my job. It wasn't about what was going on around on the outside circle of the team. It was about individually coming in and making an impact on a team to where I can reestablish myself as a pro. So that was my mindset coming in. Now, when I got there and started receiving the support from the fans and the community, I instantly fell in love with Toronto. Instantly, because I've never had, prior to that or after that, the type of fan base that supported me. That Toronto fan base supported me like no other. And that's why I always call it my second home.
Did you feel like as you were coming maybe into the end of that, like another team, maybe depending on the situation, would come in and offer you that free agent deal, or staying a Raptor and seeing how the team would develop and maybe become that playoff team?
I loved my teammates. I wanted to be a Raptor. I did not want to leave. The way the rules were set up so the Canadian teams would not grow fast. So they did not have a full salary cap. So they couldn't re-sign me for like 2 years. That was like the rule. And so I would have been making minimum for 2 more years. Now, Isaiah, I talked to him about this. I was really upfront with him. Isaiah's my big brother to this day. And, he was helping, not only is he the negotiator, but he actually cared for us, and he was like, bro, you got to look out for your family. So he was like, if I was you, I would take the bird in the hand and go. It's a business. And when he said that, a tear went down my eye because, as I say again, I love my teammates. I was happy in Toronto. It's hard to get what you want and still be happy in that business. You can get what you want and still be miserable, depending on who you're playing with, the organization, where you're located. It can be miserable. And I had finally found a place that I was happy at. And, and unfortunately I had to leave. I was sad leaving Toronto. I was upset when my agent called me and said there was a 7-year deal on the table with Washington. Now, that pushed me to the pension part, which I was happy about. But I was not happy about leaving Toronto. From day one I left, I was trying to get back. And I ended up coming back, and because of injury, they ended up shipping me out. But I wanted to retire a Raptor. I did.
And at that time, too, in the league, you come back to the Raptors, and it's a completely different environment with how much exposure they got. So, someone who was there from that first year to when you return as a Raptor, what was your first initial reaction to that?
So I'll go from being like one of the stars to being a role player. So basketball-wise, it was different. It wasn't the same. But how the organization was growing at a rapid rate. I go from being on an expansion team to, maybe 3-4 years later, now we're a championship contender. We're in the playoffs. We have Vinsanity running wild in Toronto. We have Oak up there. We have Dale Curry up there. We have Antonio Davis up there. Alvin Williams. We have some guys. Mo Pete was a young buck. We have some guys now. Keon Clark came in to trade with me, and Keon can play. We had some pieces up there. We're trying to make some noise at this point. So it was a completely different change, but it was a change for the better because we were winning now. We were actually playing for something. We wasn't just trying to reestablish ourselves or establish ourselves as an organization. We wasn't reestablishing ourselves as individuals and establishing ourselves as an organization, shall I say. Now we were established and we're playing for something now. We're trying to win a championship, and we had pieces in place. And that was a great experience to come back and play with Vince and those guys.
And you also touched on it there, like how the game of basketball changed and your role changed. Years down the line, another role changes. You become an assistant coach on the Lakers, and Kobe Bryant's on the team. It's his final years. So going from a player to a coach, is there a big transition phase, or did you like right away immediately take into the role?
Well, I was already a coach in the G League for 3 years. I was also coaching the WNBA 1 year, and I was still coaching my brother's organization with Prodigy. So I had already been developing and working with young people, the whole time. So the transition, the opportunity to come to be the shooting coach for the Lakers, it was a great opportunity because number one, my big brother Byron Scott was he was the head coach, and he reached out, and him and Mitch Kupchak reached out and gave me an opportunity. So I thought that was going to be a great opportunity. Let me go see what this is like. Paul Pressey, unbelievable person, unbelievable coach, was his head assistant. Then you have Larry Lewis and Jimmy Iron, and Jimmy Iron is a veteran in the game. Thomas Scott was developing. JJ Outlaw was developing. JJ's in Washington now. Thomas is still coaching. Larry Lewis was excellent. He's coaching with the Aces now. So it's like we had a really, really good staff, but we were really young as a team. So we had Kobe, who we had the farewell celebration going the whole year. We had really young talent, and we had a couple of veterans on the team that might have been, I say Lou Williams was probably wasting himself away on that team. And, he probably deserved a better situation than that, and he ended up going to the Clippers after that and playing, at a higher level at that point. But, it was cool being around Lou, his thing, Kobe's farewell tour. After being a player with Kobe, after that Raptor year, I got traded to the Lakers. So after being a teammate of Kobe's, to be on there, and Mark Madsen was another one of the assistant coaches. We all played together. So Byron was Kobe's mentor on the team, his veteran, when Kobe was a baby in the game. Then he brought AC Green and James Worthy in as special coaches, so they would come every now and then. So Kobe played for them, played with them earlier, and he played with me and Mark. So there were 5 guys on the coaching staff that Kobe played with, so he had more in common with us than he did with them. With the young guys. The young guys are trying to figure it out, don't understand, don't really work hard at this time. And he was frustrated with that. Plus, he was going through, his body wasn't cooperating with him. It was the end. He knew it was the end. But it was cool to get back with Kobe. As a player, you feel a certain way because Kobe is really driven. It kind of rubs you the wrong way sometimes. but I understood where he was going, and I had been knowing Kobe from day one that he came into LA. So I was always good with Kobe. To come back and to coach him was also a joy because you saw the maturation from the number 8 days through the 24 days. It was really different. He was more of a leader, a family man, a father. There was many different things going on from the 8 days. He was really driven. He was, basketball has always been his life, but that was his primary. Now, when you come back and you see the family man, he was a different guy. He was a different guy, still driven on the basketball court, still took it extremely. He was really competitive and extremely personal. That's the way he plays. He turns into that monster on the court. But you saw the other side of Kobe, right? And I thought that was the cool part, was to see the family man, his relationships with his daughters, his wife being around, and that was a different side of Kobe that I saw that I didn't see the years before as a player.
And even Kobe, like I remember even seeing like all the documentaries on him and just even his interviews, like you hear how he thought and his thought process to constantly improving and putting the hours in. As somebody who has been part of the game as a player, as a coach, and in the media, who is a player right now, or maybe even players right now, that you would look at and say, you know what, I think they embody some similarities to Kobe Bryant?
It's funny you say that because when we were in, they were saying, okay, who's the guy that's similar to Mike, right? So you're always looking for that guy that's similar to certain, and it's not really game, and it's not really talent, it's not really skill set. It's more or less mentality. He says Mamba mentality. Well, he had the same mentality as Michael Jordan. Yeah. He was talented. He was gifted, and he didn't let anybody outwork him. And he was driven. I don't see anybody that's been like that since. I think the closest thing to that right now is probably Shai. Shai is very driven. He works hard. You see him add something to his game. I don't know Shai, so I've never been around him, and I'm not a coach on the coaching staff to see when he comes in to work. So professionally, I don't know how he approaches everything. You just know that he improves every year, and he's won now. Let's see how the rest of it plays out, right? It's not about, as I say again, talent or patterning yourself. It's a mentality. He attacks, on the court. He's more of a quiet leader. He's not barking at people, right? I don't know how he is in the locker room. I just know that whole team loves each other. And it's easier to play when roles are accepted, everybody loves each other, everybody's on the same page. It's a lot easier to play that way. It's hard in the NBA because no one wants to accept that. So when you do get a situation where everybody's on the same page, everybody loves each other, everybody accepts their roles, no one is being punished for accepting that role. Because normally you're trying to scrap and move up the ladder, right? And normally the year after that, they get rid of people at the bottom because they're trying to move up the ladder. Now, are you going to punish those that are good workers because they're staying in their place and being supportive? It's really curious to see how OKC is going to handle that whole deal because I've never seen anything like it. But to get back to the original question, Shai, approximately the same size, attack mode, numbers, Yeah, as I say again, I don't know the young man. I wish I did. But just watching him from a distance, he's not barking at anybody, but he still leads. He's a respectable leader on his team, So we'll see how that plays out.
And just speaking of seeing how things will play out, one of the bigger stories. Like I'm sure a lot of your former teammates, peers in the league have gone into media. Yourself, you're in the media. Michael Jordan recently was announced he's going to get in the media too with the broadcast on the NBA on NBC. So, what do you think Michael Jordan will add to the broadcast? Because a lot of fans now have seen him in The Last Dance, that other side that they didn't know about of Michael Jordan, how he talks and how unfiltered he could be. So, what do you think that will do to the broadcast side of things?
This is what I think. And I don't know, what kind of training he's getting right now, or if, Michael always wants to be the best at something. It's no different than Kobe. I don't think Michael's going to take the gig and not want to be good at it. So one thing he does know is the game. He is, in many people's eyes, the GOAT. So why wouldn't you want to hear from him? He's been silent for years. Why wouldn't you want to hear from him? I want to hear from him. I'm curious to hear what he has to say. So I think that's a good job by NBC to bring him in. So I want to hear what he has to say. I want to hear, if he's entertaining. I want to hear, praises, criticisms. I want to hear from what he's got to say, because I know him. M is a competitor. He knows the game. And I know him as a good guy. He's very extremely competitive though, and he is unfiltered. Which I like. I like unfiltered. I like people that is going to keep you on your toes and you're not going to be too comfortable. You don't know what he's going to say. I like that because that's part of being entertaining. Charles Barkley is the same way.
Yeah,
he's entertaining. He's unfiltered. You never know what he's going to say. Shaq, same way. Never know what he's going to say. That's why they had to keep that show. Those two are entertaining. You never know what's going to come out of their mouth. It can be funny. It can be controversial. They can argue back and forth. They can be ready to fight, but they love each other. It's a show. It's entertaining. So I'm curious to see what Mike brings to the table because he has a lot to say. He's the GOAT, as I say again, in many eyes. I'm curious of what he's got to say. He's been, as I say again, he's been quiet for years. He's just been playing golf. I want to see what he has to say. So shout out to NBC for bringing him on.
Just a couple final questions here. Like you did mention Shaq and Charles Barkley, and it ties into MJ too, because like you said, they're unfiltered, but sometimes when they criticize some of the players of today's game, you see some of them maybe take offense to it and say they're just purposely downplaying this generation. Do you think if Michael Jordan maybe like credits someone, or if he's just criticizing constructively, it'll have that same effect? Or do you think because of his reputation as how some people view him as a GOAT, it might not be so controversial like when Shaq and Charles Barkley do it?
This is my thing with this generation. Look, we had to go through the same thing. We were being criticized by people before us too. You got to have a thick skin, man. It's constructive criticism. If you listen to what they say and maybe apply it, then you don't hear it again. I just think this generation is really sensitive, and I love these guys. I love them. I think they're great. I don't think they're to blame for anything. Commissioner, Silver changes the rules. The referee enforces the rules. They changed the rules because they felt like they needed more scoring. They needed more movement and all that. It's not for us to criticize the players about. That was a rule thing. I think players adjust to any rules that you put out there. If you look at the playoffs, it got physical. The players adjusted, right? So I thought this was the best playoff series in a while because the refs let them play. There was a lot of restricted movement out there, and the players were still effective. So the only problem I have with today's basketball is analytics is too much a part of the game. Like, I don't need analytics to know that Lou Williams operates mostly on the left side of the floor. I don't need analytics to tell me that. I know that with my trained eye, right? I think analytics is good for certain things, but it should not be the end all be all. And they're making it the end all be all. 30% of 3-pointers is better than 40% of 2-pointers, and we need you guys to get to the rack or get fouled and go to the line. Okay, you're eliminating the middle of the court. You're eliminating the mid-range. I lived in the mid-range. Michael lived in the mid-range. Kobe lived in the mid-range. Dale Curry lived in the mid-range. Us shooters, even Reggie Miller, everybody look at us as 3-point shooters. We lived in the mid-range. Rip Hamilton lived in the mid-range. So I understand the theory in numbers, but you have non-shooters shooting 3-point shots. Non-shooters. That's my problem. Big should be inside. Throw the ball inside and let them work. I know the floor needs to be open. Well, get downhill and throw the big a lob then. You know, Shai operates in the mid-range. DeMar DeRozan operates in the mid-range. Your great players operate in the mid-range. Don't block that off the people. Let them operate. That's my problem with analytics, and that's my problem with the game. Let them operate in the mid-range. There's a big gap of floor that they don't use. That's basketball. They're turning it into baseball where you're using just numbers. That's baseball. That ain't basketball. So that's my problem with today's basketball. It has nothing to do with the players. It has everything to do with analytics and the style of play. You know, everybody, like, if you want a 3-point shooting contest, watch All-Star Weekend.
Yeah.
If Steph wants to shoot a lot of 3-pointers, Steph shoots a lot of 3-pointers. Let him shoot a lot of 3-pointers. Let Clay shoot a lot of 3-pointers. I mean, you got dudes out there that can't hit the side of a P with side of a barn with a P, and they're shooting 3-point shots. That's my problem with it. Like when I used to go try to post up, Shaq would be like, "Get your little ass out of here. This is my area." So now you want to run to the 3-point line. Get your big ass out of my area and you get in your area. That's the way I feel about it. Because we all got roles, right?
Yeah.
We're all trying to play our roles. So if you're in my way of playing my role, what's my role now? Everybody looks the same. I don't like when everybody looks the same. Everybody should be different. Teams should be different. If you look at basketball now, everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody looks the same. Who's different? The ones that are playing in the mid-range are different. Everybody playing in the mid-range is different. They said viewership is down because everything looks the same. It looks like a video game. Like, show me something different. Golden State was different at the beginning. Now everybody because the NBA is a copycat league, everybody wants to be like Golden State. But Golden State had those pieces that made it work. Yeah. Everybody can't be Golden State. Everybody couldn't be the Chicago Bulls and run the triangle offense. Everybody couldn't be the Lakers when they had their pieces and run the triangle offense. You have to have the pieces. You know, there's nobody creative anymore. That's the problem. And it's not the players. It's more on the coaches, the analytic department, all that, because they're making them play a certain way. They're all learning from European culture on how to play European basketball, and to make it comfortable for Europeans coming over here. But at the same time, yeah, the product, you know, you're making a lot of money, but American players are losing who they are.
Yeah.
The world is catching up. We're falling behind. It also happens on the AAU level because they copy what happens up top. So now we have a bunch of, you know, chuckers down here that can't shoot. So I'm seeing the same thing on the lower levels, college, moving up to the NBA, and it's like they mimic the NBA, and not everybody can play that style. Perfect for Golden State, but not perfect for everybody.
And it took me in there to my final question, because you mentioned about AAU, and like I'm noticing too, like when I remember seeing like LaMelo Ball's games, like you can go watch when he was a kid playing at that level everywhere, and like all that exposure that some of these kids have now at such a young age. Do you think that's harmful for the development, or do you think because they experience that kind of culture, it helps them in a way going forward.
I think the internet is bad for the kids because we've become a click culture. We become a highlight culture. Nobody watches games anymore. Um, Everybody's playing for the likes and not playing to win the game anymore. They're playing for the highlight. They're not playing the game the correct way. It's a major problem on the lower levels. Major problems at grassroots levels. You know, the third to fourth grade, all the way to eighth grade, high school, bad basketball. You know, the ones that stick out and continue to move forward are those who are disciplined and have fundamentals. Fundamentals is still an essential part of the game. You still have to be able to jump, stop, pivot. You got to be able to pass, dribble, or shoot, make a play for your teammates. Still got to be able to defend somebody. It's still basic fundamentals of basketball that still has to be achieved out there in order to succeed. And we're seeing a rat race on the bottom, you know, and it's going to affect the top at some point because these guys got to move up. And then this it's also another thing. More NBA jobs are going to people outside of the United States because of the click culture. Everybody wants to play the game for likes. Everybody want to go viral. Like if it was the internet when I played, I wouldn't have went viral. I was putting up 44 game in high school, but wouldn't have went viral. Why? Because I was basic. I was knocking down jump shot, pump fake, one bounce dribble, pull up, post up jump hook, post up fade away. I wasn't through the legs, tween behind my back, go and dunk on somebody. You know, that I wasn't doing it for a show. I was doing it to win. I was playing to win. And I think we play for the show a little too much now. And you know, it's nothing wrong with being clever to get somewhere. That's different. But they're dribbling the air out the ball in one place and not going anywhere. You need to make a move and go somewhere, draw a crowd, create for somebody, or finish. The game is simple. We're making it difficult. And it's really difficult on the lower levels. Parents are out of control. They're fighting coaches and referees. They're delusional. Everybody thinks they're going to the NBA. There's only 450 spots, people. And you're saying this at second and third, fourth grade. They don't do the percentages. You have a better percentage of being a rocket scientist than being an NBA player. So there's a lot of delusion on the lower levels, and people are losing their spots to people who are doing it right overseas. Like, I played overseas for 3 years. I see their development system. They're doing things we used to do that we no longer do over here. That's why they're getting spots, because they know how to play. We say ours don't know how to play. They're like, what do you mean? He goes between. You don't know how to play basketball. Simple, fundamental basketball. Put your skill set within the game and play the game the correct way. That's what's missing in United States basketball, especially on the grassroots level. That's why the girls' game is taking off. They play the right way.
Every sport I could see like having something similar, but like at basketball too, like you mentioned it there, like I have noticed that where you're seeing more Europeans come in and they're thriving right away. And some of the American players that are highly touted out of college, they're struggling, finding themselves in the G League, out of the league. So yeah, hopefully that changes.
Big names.
Turns around.
Big names. You know, they're not making it because they don't know how to play. You got to know how to play basketball. That's the problem. They got to figure that part out and they're talented. They have skills. They're way more talented and way more skilled than I ever was, way more athletic than I ever was. They just don't know how to play basketball. That's the problem.
Tracy, before we wrap up here and let you go, you've been very generous with your time. Greatly appreciate that. How can our viewers and listeners here at the Game Plan and at sportsboom.com follow you on social media and stay up to date with everything you're doing?
Well, I'm on Instagram at Real Tracy L. Murray, Facebook, Real Tracy L. Murray, and X at Real Tracy Murray.
Highly recommend that follow. And Tracy, greatly appreciate you sharing your time and coming on here to talk about all things basketball with me. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Giancarlo. Always a pleasure, man.